Are you going to say it?
Am I supposed to say it?
You say it.
Is it 96?
96.
Okay, I'll say it. I said it.
Still here.
We're still here. Okay, so the topic.
The topic.
Okay, the topic. I don't know. Should we do Alexander the Great, or should we do the other topic?
Let's do Alexander the Great.
Okay. I don't know why. Even though we flipped the coin and it was the other one. Oh, your sleeve is bent up. Okay, so the topic is Alexander the Great.
But not exactly.
But not exactly. So I was in the meditative state. This was months ago. Maybe like half a year ago. So
it was this year because we went for a walk right after.
Oh, was this year?
It was this calendar year.
Oh, I mean, we're in the 7th month, so it could be half a year.
Yeah, I think it was probably like February, March.
Wait, why is us going for a walk means it's this year?
Because I think for like probably like December, we probably didn't.
We didn't walk in the winter time? Oh, we walked in the winter time. What the heck?
It doesn't feel that long ago.
Okay, well, maybe I would say early spring.
Yeah, early spring.
Early spring. So maybe it hasn't been 6 months. I go into this meditative state. And so I will kind of like not introduce the actual vision that I had. So I go into the meditative state, and then I had several past lives. I will put quotes around that I remember from Egypt. And a lot of them just had these stuck emotional, patterns in them that I had to release. And when we went to Egypt, I released one of them. And I don't know if this one relates to that one or not, but I go into... So in the meditative state, I come across Angel Michael. And a lot of times, depending on the meditation, I will tune into either, like some archetype. I'll just say it. And then the second I tune into him, he takes me to a truck of Angel St. Michael that we saw in Aswan. Right? Aswan? Is that where we saw it? Where we stayed on the boat on the Elefante Island?
Yes.
Yeah. So we stayed on the Airbnb on the Elefante Island. Elephantine, right?
Elephantine Island.
Elephantine Island. I want to say Elephant Island, but it's Elephantine. And so basically the way this vision works, like I tune into him automatically tunes me into the truck. I'm surprised why I'm on the truck. I realize, wait, this truck was on Aswan. Then all of a sudden I get taken to Elephantine Island, and then I have this knowing / story. And so I think I'd come out and I tell you the story, or at some point I tell you the story.
Oh, we were on a walk.
Oh, is that how you remember it?
Yeah, we were on a walk, and then I made my own connection.
Yeah, so I tell you the story, and you're like, wait, isn't this like really similar to Alexander the Great? And I'm like, I don't know anything about Alexander the Great. Like, you usually don't hear too great of things about Alexander the Great.
But he's the Great.
Well, I think that's kind of a
Nate the Great type of thing.
Nate the Great, right? There's a YouTuber that I have slight judgments towards, that I think he's killing his wife. That I call him, but maybe the derogatory term of Nate the Great. Anyway, and so in this case, then we go on this rabbit hole of actually watching Alexander the Great's documentary based on like historical accounts and documented accounts, the best that they could produce. And this story, like, I just have jaw dropping. We have to pause the video like almost all the time because I'm like, oh my gosh, that is exactly. And so it's just crazy. So it gets crazy. So here's what this podcast is. It is a combination of the vision that I had, which I think is accurate,
mm-hmm.
and the historical accounts,
mm-hmm.
and how they match up. But more accurately, I think my vision is actually the correct account, and the historical accounts are basically follow my vision exactly, but then like they fill in some assumptions that my vision actually answers.
Yeah.
In a very interesting way.
First, I want to say that so Elephantine Island is an island in the middle of the Nile, off in Egypt, at Aswan, right? Mm-hmm. And it has historical significance because there was a temple structure there. Right now it's in ruins.
Mm-hmm.
B, they believe that the Ark of the Covenant, or perhaps one of the Arks of the Covenant, depending on the interpretation, was stored there for a period of time. And then B and a half, or C, I don't know if you want me to say it yet.
No, go ahead. You can say it.
Okay. They believe that there was a portal there. Because if you look at the ruins are almost blown out from this one central portal, which is like the only thing still standing as the columns of this portal or something. It's weird.
It's a doorway.
Yeah. So they think perhaps the Ark went through the portal or something, or maybe someone went through the portal or something came through the portal. I'm not quite sure. But we explored it. We kind of snuck in after hours and it was dark. Do we have flashlights?
We had our phones.
We had our phones. I don't think I had a flashlight with me.
Yeah, I think we had our phones.
So we were exploring it in the dark. Because our Airbnb was like a boat. It was like a Airbnb boat thing on the Nile. There's a side story about your death on the Nile.
Yeah, I had the death on the Nile.
There too, but
I don't know if before or after this. But I think I came, if you don't know the trapped energy that you need to release, that energy just plopped on to me so much after 2017. I was having a hard time managing it. And I think because I was unsure of how to release it and I was struggling of placing it and all that, it took me actually going to the place where it got trapped in order to be able to release it. Yeah. So I had one of my first mini deaths on that boat.
I was terrified because you were not doing well. You had a fever and you weren't eating, and we're in the middle of an incredibly impoverished island in Egypt, and I'm like, do we just get on the boat and try to get you to the mainland to get to the hospital? I was
I was fine.
Nervous.
They told me that this was like a death. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And because it was my first one, I got scared because I didn't know what it meant. But at the same time, this was the craziest thing. I was totally okay dying. Like I have never felt that. I mean, since then I have felt that many times. And so I'm so used to it. But like that was the first time I was okay dying and I was welcoming dying. Like it's weird to say that. I guess have you had many deaths?
Yeah, I know. This is not like feeling.
This is not like I'm depressed and I want to die.
I know.
This is like like I'm cool with whatever.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. But at the same time, I wasn't in any hurry to lose you.
No, but I was fine. It felt like this huge cycle being completed, and so dying within this completion of the cycle felt absolutely right. And so I don't know how this piped into my head, right? But yeah, for some reason, the energy of that whole place, of course, is completely magical. Since then, that's when we heard somebody else's theory about why the below zone is centered around this arc. But while we were walking there, I'm like, oh no, I remember this place, and I remember the funerary procession that took place. While I was there, I remember the funerary procession that took place by the island that came down, all the way from the Nile.
Yeah.
And I think it relates to my vision. So I don't know if this lifetime is the same lifetime that I released. It might or might not be, but we'll get into it.
Yeah. But it's important. So, but just want to reiterate, this is a very special island. It has very interesting rock outcroppings and structures on there. Temple structure, portal, and all that stuff we've heard about since our trip, but we heard about that independently of your vision.
Yeah. No, and so I've heard my vision. So I remember recollections of it being important and being like a place where you go to travel. Okay, yeah. So my vision starts. This is where it starts. So I don't know what's the best way to do it. Like I guess as we talk about, think of like how we should be arcing the archaeological accounts and written accounts of Alexander the Great, and then my vision. Or maybe we'll just go back and forth section by section.
I guess start at the beginning of your...
Okay, so yeah, beginning of mine has nothing to do with Alexander the Great. And I think this is so crazy, but I 100% believe that this is true. So like, I just know that this is true. Because when I went into this vision, it felt so right that I'm like, there's no, like, there's no way this is not true. Especially after we watched the documentary, like the 5-part series, and like I'm like, oh, and my jaw just drops and drops and drops. Anyway, so that's how much excitement I have for it. It starts out with, I am basically Pharaoh's wife. I don't know what my standing is. I don't think there was such thing as a title as a king and a queen. So maybe like Pharaoh.
Concubine.
No, I was not a concubine. I don't think he had multiple wives. I think it was okay for him based on the culture to have multiple concubines, multiple women that he slept with. But it was also okay for me to sleep with other men. So like, I don't understand. That is not obviously the norm in the United States. Why is that funny? Why is all of a sudden this funny? So the mixing of like marital statuses, and then like, was very flexible. It was a very flexible type of a situation. Although I don't think there was a lot of times, and I wasn't even bothered by it. But I don't even remember if I engaged with other men or not. It doesn't matter. Anyway, that's the sideline. Okay, it's a complete sideline. So I am wife, and he's a pharaoh, and he's a pharaoh of the entire Egypt. And he is, so I'm like darker skinned, and he's darker skinned.
Like Nubian or like
no,
Egyptian?
Not Nubian, Egyptian. We're Egyptian. And so, but like he's so loved by his people, like whatever this is, not like, I don't think anybody is loved by the people the way the Egyptians loved their pharaohs back in the day.
The pharaohs were literally gods.
Yeah, but, yes, but like...
But
God's not through force, but like this innate, open-hearted connection to this being, and this being has this enormous love towards you.
Right.
And so us as a royal family just took care of our people through this huge energetic gift. Like it was just the amount of love we have for the people was just immense. Like I cannot bring myself to think of anything on earth that I can relate to right now that would be this open-hearted and clear. And it was just amazing. Anyway, so I say that. But so this is the question is, and we have a son, and he is in his late teens, early 20s. So like Aiden right now, this was like probably right as he turned 18, but he was a little bit older. I think he was either 19 or 20 or 21. So he was within those 3-year range. I don't remember. And he's like basically he's destined to be the next pharaoh. Right. Mm-hmm. And I don't think we have any other kids for some reason, or if they are, they're not with me, but he is the next heir to the throne. Right. And like, I think the only heir to the throne that would actually have the standing, to be like the heir to the throne. And so through some sort of war, now I do not know what this war is. Like at the time I thought it was Nubian war, but I don't know.
Yeah. We when we were in Egypt, we learned some of the history that there was just, I guess, centuries of battles between the Egyptians in the north and the Nubians in the south, and the line of where that, I guess, front would moved up and down mm-hmm. and up and down, and at times there were Nubian pharaohs.
Yeah,
because the Nubians conquered Egypt, and then I guess the Egyptians took it back, and eventually,
Well, however this is, I know that our family was loved in the south.
Right.
So the south was not against us,
which is Upper Egypt.
Yeah. Was Nubian. Yeah. Like the Aswan is mostly Nubian, and even and then as you go lower and lower towards Sudan is all it gets mostly Nubian.
Right. There's an interesting gradient.
Yeah.
Because up in Cairo, it's vast majority is Egyptian.
Yeah. And when we were there, we had no clue that there was this immense amount of racism
There's
against
a ton
Nubians
of racism
still in Egypt.
Probably back and forth. And I guess that historically goes back to, well, the Egyptians were, the height of civilization back then. And here, the Nubians are fighting them. And I assume they never forgot, never forgave.
Yeah, it's interesting, like these conflicts that you don't realize within the country, right? But like the same thing with Ukraine, right? Like when I was growing up in Ukraine, the Western Ukrainers didn't like the Eastern Ukrainians.
We went on an excursion, and the driver was Nubian, but he was an Egyptian-born Egyptian citizen who happened to be dark-skinned, and he was. We saw it happen. The police were like, papers, and he's like, if I was ethnically Egyptian, this would not be happening. I have my license, my ID, my passport, whatever. I am just as Egyptian by nationality as anybody else here.
Yeah.
But because I'm dark skinned,
he gets stopped at roadblocks. I get hassled. In fact, we were forced to go around like a longer way to get back to Aswan from Dendera.
Yeah.
Because he was Nubian.
Yeah.
Like through the prejudice of them. No. Wait.
Yeah, this was a different...
Oh, okay, Luxor. This was the Airbnb. We were staying in Luxor. So from Luxor, we drove up to Dendera, which is a whole other episode we should have. And then, the Hathors are the Hathor temple. And so, yeah. And then, so coming back, we could have went the same way we came. But they blocked off the road, got his ID, saw his ID, and then basically racially profiled him and like send him a roundabout way back.
And not only that, they followed him for like 20 miles to make sure he didn't like turn back around and go the other way.
Yeah. With a military convoy. It was like a huge military truck with a whole bunch of soldiers.
It was really weird. And he's like, because it added like an hour to the drive. The other way.
Yeah.
The way that he went to get there was kind of through the desert.
Yeah, maybe illegally.
And we're like, okay, why are we off the road now? What's going on? But I mean, they, it's this tour thing. They do it all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, so side story. So so at some point we enter in some sort of conflict, and so my husband gets murdered, right?
The pharaoh.
The pharaoh gets murdered, and I don't know if it is through the Nubian conflict, or the Nubians are backed by somebody else. I have no idea. So long story short, he's dead. And then our son is now basically next in line to become the pharaoh. But the country is taken over, right? Like, so they are taking over the country. Like they're taking over Egypt with their rule, right?
Yeah.
And so the story of me as his wife, I basically get assigned or get married to the new ruler because that gives him legitimate claim to the throne.
Ooh, I can connect this in later, but go ahead.
Yeah. And because I know that because I know that the Egyptians, that we basically supported, and energetically provided for, will not let this stand and will be revolting against this. I know that the only claim that they have to do this would be through our son. And I realize, oh shit, they're going to kill him.
He's the more legitimate heir, so we need to get rid of him.
Yeah. So before I get married to him, their goal is to hunt him down and execute him. And I know it's Aiden. This is the weird thing, is like I energetically, like I don't connect you to the pharaoh, but I connect, like in this vision, I know that this is Aiden, which is really strange. And so what I do is I go to Aswan and I shove him or basically push him out through the portal to basically have him escape from Egypt in order to be saved, right? Which I thought, okay, this story is absolutely incredible, right? And now I'm like, oh my gosh. And, whenever you have a vision as your own experience and you have this immense amount of energy that comes back on board, I'm like, oh, this is solid truth. I just know it, right?
Yeah.
So then I'm like, oh, okay. And so like, whenever I meditate and I'm on the vision quest, I have this little like watcher that watches things and like things like when I channel, right? Like I channel and I have the small me just like, oh, this is so cool, like, and so I just kind of like get excited to share it and analyze it. And so then the thing completely flips, and I don't know how it flips. So do you want to say anything before I go into the other half or the actual half?
Not yet. Not from that.
Okay. So that chapter ends with Egypt now being occupied by this party, which 100% not 100% sure who it is, taken over. They claim the right through the throne through the marriage to me, and I'm basically kind of like imprisoned / being held captive /
Could it have been the Persians that took it over?
Yes. So what I'm saying is, even though the Namibians might have been helping them, they might have been backed by the Persians. Nubians. Yeah. In Namibia. Yeah. Wait, Namibia. Where's Namibia? Namibia is a country. It has nothing.
It's in Africa too, I think.
Yeah, it's in Africa, but it has nothing to do with Kenya. Nairobi. Okay. So, yes.
I know where your mind just went, but that seems like it. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So that is where the Egypt story pauses. Okay. I'm kind of imprisoned / being held hostage in the position to give legitimacy to the current rule, which is not dissimilar from something else we're getting ready to connect into.
Right.
But I think they misunderstood and misinterpreted the thing. Okay. So then all of a sudden I see Aiden then come, like after I shove him into the portal and he leaves, I see him basically energetically become angry, outraged about the situation. And then he then decides to come back to Earth. And the only thing I know is amass a huge army and the following to the west of Egypt. That is the only thing that at this point in my vision I correlate with. And then after amassing this amount of army, which I'm like, I don't even know how you would do that. How would you even accomplish that? Because I think he's young. How do you become that young and you amass party and a huge following? And then marches with this freaking army to Egypt. So I don't know at which point we're going to have to start to cross over. Maybe I'll just finish
that.
Yeah. Marches to Egypt with this army to revenge the death of his father, who's my husband and his father, and then basically slaughters out of, like, what I feel about this is a huge amount of trapped hatred and energy he has towards avenging his family, his father, enslaving and raping his mother, and then basically taking over his land, taking over Egypt and taking over his people, and basically, slaughtering his people. Just, I feel the energy of the emotional stuckness that he has towards this. And so the amount of inertia that he has to basically amass this army, lead this army, take over, basically, get to Egypt, and then basically slaughter everyone who would have been in the position who would have caused this atrocity to begin with. And then he basically installs himself as the rightful, king or pharaoh of Egypt, and then rules Egypt from there. And then there was a Siva sideline that I go into to where I ended up seeing him at an oasis in Siva. I don't know if in the physical form or spiritual form, but him and I are conversing. And then I know that I die in Siva, either before he gets there or after he gets there. I don't know. And so my second half of this vision is me helping him heal the trapped energy that he had that caused him to have this much energetic influx in order to basically take over and rage vengeance on the people who took over Egypt. And then so just as a sideline, in the next lifetime, I realized that I am his daughter and he's just angry. Like post that, he's just angry ruling Egypt. And as a daughter, I talk to him energetically, and I help him release the energetic influx. So the whole thing was a healing process, like the steps, like the history and energetic influx that had him be in a position that he is, and then like the healing that needed to take place in order for him to release this cyclical nature that was trapped in the whole cycle.
Yeah.
So that is the only thing.
That's your vision.
That is my vision. That is the only thing that I know, and I'm just kind of brushstroking.
And you're telling me this because I remember we were on a walk behind the school, or on the side of the school, and you're telling me this, and I'm like, that sounds an awful lot like the story of Alexander the Great, who, kind of emerges out of nowhere and amasses a massive army, and the army keeps getting bigger and bigger, and he just remains undefeated, battling till he gets to Egypt, where he becomes.
Well, we did not know this.
Well, I knew he went to Egypt because he founded Alexandria.
Yeah, but we did not know the details behind it.
Yeah.
That's the part that is like
I had
has no explanation.
I had some brushstrokes of it that it sounded like that, and so we dive in and we watch a documentary. Links in the show notes.
Yeah. So now we will kind of like start marrying the documentary that is archaeologically based and record based, and then like their assumptions, and then maybe clarifying our thoughts on the assumptions based on this vision.
Yeah. So it starts off. Alexander the Great is kind of in a self-imposed exile because, his father is king of
Macedonia.
Macedon.
Yeah.
And so he's the
which is like a suburb of Greece, or like
it's
a different country.
It's Greek, but it's like its own Greek kingdom.
Providence. Yeah, maybe Providence of Greece.
Yeah, and is his mother the king's wife or the king's concubine? I forget.
No, his mother is the wife.
Oh, that's right.
But he is
the old wife, because now the king has a new wife.
Yeah.
Who may or may not be pregnant. I don't remember.
Yeah. When he comes back, he comes back either to the marriage or to the birth.
I think it's to the marriage.
To the marriage.
Yeah.
So Alexander the Great is in exile for at least a year or two.
Yeah.
Because he had a fight with his father over something.
The father's general got drunk and like tried to kill him or something, and the father didn't do anything to stop it. So Alexander the Great says, screw it. And he goes off with, I think, Ptolemy, who also would later become his own pharaoh of Egypt. But anyway. So yeah. So he comes. So, but the thought is Alexander is the current next in line, current heir apparent.
Mm-hmm.
But if the king marries this new wife and they have a son, maybe that would be the new heir. And,
so
Alexander doesn't want that. And Alexander's mother doesn't want that.
Yeah.
Because she sees something in him. She sees greatness in him, A.
Yeah.
And B, later on, she tells him, hey, by the way, the king, not your dad. Your dad is Zeus. Like literally, Zeus is the father of you.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, you can't die. You can't be killed. Everything you do is just blessed by Zeus. Yeah.
Right. But I want to say, when we were ruling Egypt, we were not modern day interpretation of human, right? Or the energy. So when my husband was a pharaoh, right, and I was, let's say, his wife, and our son was the prince, and that was next in line, right? We were not human in the sense of human, right?
Yeah.
And so one of the ways that presents itself is we energetically supported and took care of the land and the people, and fed. I don't know how we fed it. I mean, I can basically kind of meditate on this and figure this out, but it doesn't matter right now. But we energetically fed, and see, I use the word controlled, but it wasn't like control. To me has this not malicious, but like cynical. You know, like control is negative, like it has a cynical negative aspect to it, but it wasn't that. It was like quite literally through love, we controlled and ruled Egypt and then fed it energy of the source because we were one of the source, right? Like we just
in the beginning of the story.
Yeah, in my meditation. No, I'm just looking back of the energy.
You and your husband.
Yeah, our origin. Yeah. Right, our origin. We were direct lines of the energetic source that allowed human to feel the source, right? So the reason why we were perceived as gods or pharaohs or whatever, right, is because on the three-dimensional plane, most humans function in the separation from the source. But we, as that interpretation of humanity, were still conduits, like just like when I start to channel and I try to explain my channeling whenever I write the book, I talk to you about like a what is it called? A relay station, right? A relay station of light. And we were that. Like I know we were that. And now, what does that mean? Like, could we travel, to different parts of the world either through these portals or whatever? I think that's a whole other story. But so being a son of Zeus just back then meant you were of God-like quality, but God-like quality was the same quality as the pharaohs were interpreted in Egypt, that you were just of other dimensional vibratory field, right?
Yeah.
And you lived by different rules, or by rules, I mean, you interpreted reality by a different set of circumstances. So that completely tracks. Yeah, okay.
I was going to say that Macedon, the kingdom of Macedon, it wasn't like the most powerful place in Greece. It was like this mid-level kingdom. They had an army, and it was okay to defend themselves, but it wasn't,
No, but I thought when Alexander comes back, they were already engaged in war-like efforts.
Their mortal enemies are the Persians, led by the Emperor Darius, whose only claim to the throne is the fact that he married a royal, because he did not come from royal blood.
Yeah.
So he married, I don't remember her name, his Persian wife.
Yeah.
And now he's emperor of Persia. And the Persian Empire was the most powerful empire on the face of the earth at the time. And it stretched as, I don't know, pretty far east, but as far west, it had all of Asia Minor, Turkey, it had Egypt, it had, I guess, was it Byzantium, the city that became Constantinople, that became Istanbul, that into, pushing into getting close to Greece. So the Greece-Persian front was a very heated issue, and Alexander's father was, trying to fight back and, win this, lose that, but it wasn't clear cut who's going to win this. And, when you're up against the Persian Empire, it's the biggest army in the world by a factor of like 10 or something. It's huge. It's like, it cannot be defeated.
But the biggest army in the world, but also, I guess the historical caveat there, the people who are fighting for them were taken over by them.
Right. And
so as far as loyalty goes,
a lot of mercenaries.
Yeah.
Largely mercenaries.
Well, mercenaries, but also just general loyalty. Like how much love you have for the Persians is, yes, now you're a part of Persia because Persians conquered you, and now you're fighting for the Persian.
But you're fighting for money. You're not fighting for...
Not even money. You're fighting because all of a sudden you're Persian. But before that, a lot of them were actually, before they were conquered, they were fighting against the Persians to defend the country that the Persians inevitably took over.
There were a lot of Greek mercenaries just paid by the Persians to fight whoever it happened to be that day.
Yeah, but I think based on the amount of world takeover Persia did, even the people who were fighting for Persia were not in love with the Persians.
Yeah. Because it seemed
this
like
later comes in.
Yeah, Persia kind of ended up milking the different areas that they had. And Egypt was they really squeezed that because there was a lot of gold, there was a lot of wheat, and whatever. The exports of Egypt kind of funded and fueled and fed a lot of the rest of the Persian Empire.
Yeah, well, at least that's what the archaeological records say.
And I want to say that, so I think it was literally at the wedding, Alexander's father gets murdered by someone who I think was a plant from Darius. I want to say that was the connection.
I don't remember.
And so, kills his dad, who Alexander is not on the best of terms with. But
I want to say they even like made amends. Like they kind of had like this. The documentary said they had a civil conversation to where they were trying to.
Yeah, it was the rift between Alexander and his father was starting to heal, but then Alexander's father dies, and here amongst the chaos, right? Okay, here's the king's dead.
I think that's a little bit over exaggerated. Like the show is like, oh look, the king's dead.
And then Alexander's mother's like, now's your time. Go take the throne. And he's like, okay. And so he goes and he just like takes the crown and he's like, okay, now I'm king.
Yeah. That seemed a little, I mean, maybe it was just poorly acted.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. But anyway, Alexander takes the throne after his father died. Ta-da. He is now king of Macedon. And he's like, he very quickly is like, yeah, I'm gonna go fight off the Persians. And so he takes the army and he just starts marching east. And not pretty quickly he ends up at some Persian settlement or whatever. He's in what is then the Persian Empire, fighting them, and he wins, right? Against all odds. He wins.
Yeah, like I think the documentary keeps on pointing out he's unexperienced. He has a smaller army. Well, no. To begin with, do you remember the thing said before he even fought? Because the thing kind of brushed this whole thing off.
Yeah.
But he goes onto these vision quests or oracle quests. Oh no, he went to Oracle of Delphi. What, didn't he go to Oracle of Delphi? Or somewhere around there?
I don't remember.
He goes to some oracle or some kind of vision quest to begin with to give him guidance about.
Wait, is that where he got the shield? He got some shield.
He got some magical shield from somewhere. But right. So the documentary obviously brushes these things off. It was like, oh, well, these dumb people believed in these like oracles and superstitions and things like that. So Alexander just does these things. Right. As opposed to like, no, that is what is causing him to win.
Right. But he certainly believes he is son of Zeus, cannot be defeated, cannot be killed. So he's like, come on, Darius, let's go.
Yeah. And he gets some sort of magical shield, a sword or something right before he goes.
Yeah.
And then he stops by some sort of magical knot.
That's later.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
The Gordian knot. That's later.
Yeah. Okay.
And he's doing like crazy military tactics that are the opposite of what the established military strategy would be. He's like, it would be like, oh, you don't attack first thing in the morning. You wait till after tea time. That's the polite way to do it. And that's what, I don't know what it is. It's not far off of what during the Revolutionary War, the British come over and they've got their line of soldiers and whatever, and the Americans are hiding in the bushes shooting at them. It's
like
some
sort of
guerrilla warfare.
Yeah.
He's doing something like that. And he's, using cavalry against their infantry to great success. He just knocks off, platoon after platoon of the Persian army. And nobody can believe it. He's going against his own general's advice. There's some very famous Persian general who is trying to strategize against him, and keeps losing their battles too. And at one point they defeat some army, and there's some prisoners, and some of these prisoners are Greeks who are mercenaries for the Persians, and Alexander can't stand the fact that here's Greeks who are fighting against Greeks, right? here's Greeks who have flipped to the other side, trying to fight against their homeland, and he does not leave any of them alive at all.
No, in my vision, like, like the feeling of like how much, the documentary doesn't say this. Like the documentary kind of like, I don't know, just doesn't address feelings, I guess. But the amount of rage he had to revenge his standing in Egypt drove so much, like it was just such an energetic influx to win. There was like zero doubt in his mind that he was not going to win.
Yeah.
It was just like his destiny, period. Like, in fact, when the mother tells him that he's son of Zeus, I realized later when I connect the two stories, no, he just basically reincarnated into that life.
Yeah.
Solely for the purpose of like wreaking havoc and basically going to vengeance on Egypt.
A life where, again, his father is killed by the enemy.
Yes. So the cyclical nature repeats because he reincarnates into the cycle. No, I don't, right? Like, this is like something that I think about. The time of when that happened in Egypt and when he was born and when he basically left through the portal and then decides to come back into Egypt. I don't even know if it's reincarnation based or if it's quite literally just beaming yourself into a different time and space.
Yeah, I don't know. That
coincides with the time and space that you want to basically go back to, right? It's like, here's how it feels like as far as time travel goes. Like he has an experience and he has basically like an address of a goal, right? And so he leaves, or I shove him out and I said, you have to go because otherwise basically you're dead. And then he goes, okay, well, I have to come back and I have to basically come back to Egypt somehow and have the power to take over the country again, right? And so when you have the address, us can basically just tap into the next transition, the next frame, and go, okay, here's what my goal is, and then I'm tapping into this frame. And I don't know if that tap in is quite literally birth. That's what I don't know.
Yeah.
Or at any age.
Right.
I don't know, right? Because when he leaves, he's in his 20s. When the story of Alexander the Great starts, he's right there in his early 20s.
Right. But he had the best education possible as prince.
Yes. So I don't know.
Best military education, best military training, best, swordsman stuff.
Right. So
all the history of
So when he comes,
was he educated by like Plato or Aristotle or something?
He was educated and he spent enormous amount of time being interested in Egypt and Egyptian history and their rule and understanding Egyptian culture. And the documentary kind of just brush strokes that through. But to me, that is like a huge red flag of like, why would somebody who is from Macedon get born and basically becomes obsessed with Egypt? I mean, they said he became obsessed with Egypt.
A lot of the Greeks were obsessed with Egypt. Who's the one? Is it Heraclitus who was like one of the first Greeks to document the pyramids and everything? Famously, the Sphinx. He never mentions the Sphinx.
There's two parts. Like when I was born, I became, I say obsessed, but like, the energetic draw to Egypt was just so strong. I don't know if obsessed is the right word, but yeah, anytime I could learn something about Egypt or basically tune into Egypt, there was just like this little like bells going off in my head. Okay, go Egypt direction, right? But now I realize there's Egypt, right? And there's the history, and then there is whatever, like when we explore this ancient history. And then there is ancient mystery Egypt, which is what the draw was, right? What I remember right now is that Egypt.
Right.
That has nothing to do with the current standing of the pyramids of the Sphinx or the ruins or whatever.
Yeah.
Like I remember what Egypt is meant to be and what it still is to Earth outside of its physical interpretation. Because it's still a huge power center. Like it is still feeding Earth. Wait, what was I saying this? Oh yeah, so in the documentary, it says that basically he starts and he has the best education to set him up for
being a king.
But then he's obsessed with all things Egypt.
Right.
And he basically gets the best military training possible. So as far as leaving a time and then reincarnating and coming to Earth with a specific purpose, and then basically through the resonance of that purpose, energetic purpose, facilitating that purpose, and then in fact bring the cyclical nature of the repeat cycles of your karma by your father getting murdered, just like your father getting murdered, tunes him into his goal of revenge.
Right.
Time's over, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He I'm trying to get the order of this right. Do you remember what happened first? If there was at some point he has this, like, Darius is like, okay, this is getting out of hand, and we need to put an end to this. So he personally goes with a large chunk of his army out to put an end to this once and for all.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that it was done back in the days with the Persians is the entire royal family goes. Him, his wife, his daughter, Darius, his wife, his daughter, the whole entourage goes, and they have their fancy tents and everything. And it was like 10 to 1 or something. It's like, this is not going to be a big spectacle. We're just going to quash this and be done with this, this Greek menace, and then that's it. Because Alexander had really bitten into the Persian Empire and kind of made a fool of Darius. So there was a lot of optics behind, we gotta stop this, because otherwise other people will try to do this too. So we need to show this is what happens when you try to fight the Persian Empire. You just get completely demolished.
Yeah. But the way they portray Darius is almost unhinged. His ego is so hit by this that he basically kind of is losing control and just taking everything very personally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they have this, I don't remember which happened first. Did that happen first, or did Egypt happen first?
No, that happened first.
Okay. So they go and they end up, I don't know, I assume picking this place to have this battle, which is kind of this narrow corridor. It's got the sea on one side and it's got mountains on the other side. So it's relatively narrow, like I don't know, half mile or something. It's not a wide area. And I think Darius thought that this would be to his advantage, because it's like, I've got, I don't know, 50,000, whatever, 100,000. It was the biggest, I think they said it was the biggest by soldiers battle ever in history at this point. So it was just infinite number of Persians against however many Greeks there happened to be. But Alexander the Great, military genius, it was like, okay, well, you break off and you distract them from over here, and you distract them from over here, and whatever, and then we'll wait for them to break ranks, and then I will go right down the middle and get Darius myself, type of thing, something like that. And sure enough, that's how it goes. He goes and he ends up chasing Darius, who it's portrayed. It's not that Darius is a coward and runs away, but if the Persian emperor dies, all of Persia falls, according to the Persian mindset. So his generals, his people were like, this is too close. They kind of grab Darius and they run away, because the emperor must survive. So they go. The army, who now no longer has a leader present, kind of is in tatters. They get, massacred to the nth degree because they've broken ranks. And Alexander goes and realizes, oh, Darius's wife, Darius's daughter have been left behind. The royal family has been left behind. I have now captured you. And I think they think, oh crap, he's going to rape us and kill us. But he doesn't. He's a perfect gentleman to them, and he treats them, as their own royalty, and kind of brings them along on his adventure. And instead of going into Persia, was it Babylon? Was that the seat of the Persian Empire?
I don't remember. Yeah, maybe. I think so.
He doesn't. He goes further south to Egypt, and he takes them with him.
And in fact, all of his, advisors and generals are like, no, we continue to march on Persia. Why are we going to Egypt?
Darius is on the run. We've got the upper hand. We've got all these victories behind us. Let's go get him right now. And he's like, no, we're going to Egypt.
Yeah, and nobody understood.
Nobody understands why.
Yeah. Because that was the goal.
Right. So he goes down to Egypt, and he's got this army behind him, and he kind of walks out, and he says whatever he says in Egyptian in the show to them. They end up welcoming him because they don't like the Persians, and I don't know, maybe
that is what the show wants you to think. Like, but the show does not understand or give you the exact details of how this crazy shit goes down. But my vision perfectly explained how this crazy shit goes down. They quite literally welcome him without a fight.
Yeah.
And crown him as Pharaoh.
They crown him as Pharaoh, which is like,
why?
Never before had a non-Egyptian been Pharaoh. Because Pharaoh is literally, we recognize you as a living god.
Yes.
So he becomes Pharaoh with the entire pharaonic procession and ceremony and all this stuff, which has never before been done.
Yeah, and this history cannot explain why this happened.
Yeah.
They're like, why would this, white man come in from Macedon and then basically be crowned as Pharaoh of Egypt, and the people welcome him and love him, right? Which is the exact same situation that he was in before he left through the portal when the other country took over.
Right.
Like, if you connect my vision into the history, that is why.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Is because they recognize him for who he actually is, as a reincarnated, basically, prince who had to flee after let's say the Persians and the Nubians took them over. And they see that, right? The Egyptians already see this as he's like, literally, he's just a bloodline through a different body, different reincarnation cycle, right? But they see him as the same person, the person who is the rightful prince of Egypt. And they basically install him into that title.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, to me, I was just flabbergasted. My jaw dropped, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I understand why. They saw him exactly for who he was.
Right.
Yeah.
So he's Pharaoh. The people love him. His soldiers are a little uneasy, it seems, because they're like, we're out here to fight. We're out here to get this over with so we can go home. Why are we hanging around in Egypt?
Yeah, and he basically sets up his life in Egypt.
Yeah.
And he stays there for 2 years or 5 years? I don't remember.
It was a while.
He basically decides, as he becomes Pharaoh of Egypt, he basically decides just to stay there, do not go to any military conquest, or at least, he's not, and his generals are not moving, and he just stays there.
Well, he founds Alexandria, the city.
Right? So, he basically makes that his home. Well, it was already his home, and he basically just takes over and continues ruling it like he was meant to.
Not just that, but after he becomes Pharaoh, he decides to make the 2-week trek through the desert to the Siwa Oasis, which it has like a 50% success rate. Half the time people are going to die on that. And there have been other very famous kings and generals and whatever who tried to do this and died along the way.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's 2 weeks camel ride to the Oasis and then 2 weeks back. That's a long time in the desert.
Yeah.
So he does this because he needed to do it.
Basically he's saying something is calling him to go to Siva.
Yeah.
And in my vision,
but
go ahead.
But also that's something that the Pharaoh was supposed to do, I think. And that also reaffirms his pharaohship.
Yeah. Well, I guess the documentary says that there was an oracle in Siwa.
Yeah.
And the oracle basically puts him through some sort of vision test, and confirms his standing or whatever.
Yeah.
My vision on that is So I cannot tell the difference in this vision of when I actually died in my physical form on Earth, like as far as earthly being, because I was not of Earth. So dying here did not really make me dead, right? Just like him dying on, or him leaving Earth did not make him dead. So I see him in Siva. I know he comes to Siva, and I know I see him in Siva, but I don't know if I see him in Siva in my physical form because I'm like now old aged and dying in Siva, or if I have already died in Siva. I want to say I'm still old age and are just dying in Siva. I don't remember. But either way, I do see him in some form and basically have a conversation with him in some form and then die there. I know I died there, I guess, but I don't know if it was before or after. And I don't know if he came there and they saw me and then I died, or if I was already dead in Siva and then he came to talk to me there. But the whole Siva has this magical portal energy, just like the Elephantine Island. So there's a very large, not a slightly different than a physical portal. So in Elephantine Island, it used to be like what now we would refer to as Stargate. Like it was actually a whole gate, and then you would be able to energetically travel through the gate, and then just like the Ark of the Covenant, travel through somewhere to go somewhere.
Yeah.
But Siva does not have a physical Stargate in it, but it has an energetic portal that you can tune in. But to the beings who travel through the stars, to them it doesn't matter if it's a physical Stargate, or if it's an energetic Stargate. But for earthen objects and for earthen people to travel, I want to say that them going through a physical Stargate somehow allows travel better than the energetic gate. Even though they're both energetic, the one at Siva is slightly different than the one that they used to have on Elefante Island. But anyway, in the documentary, he travels there to see the oracle, and that's how they leave it. But in truth is, he traveled there to speak to his mother, and then Egyptian mother, right? Egyptian queen. Right. And then basically that kind of like sets the tone for him accomplishing what he came there to do, which was to reconnect with his mother, who was basically, kidnapped / put into servitude, and kind of completing that broken heart that he basically left Earth through. So it was kind of this cyclical completion of why Siva was so important. But yeah, in my vision, I saw him going to Siva, and I'm like, that's a kind of a weird side note. But in the documentary, it's like, yeah, he was just determined, and everybody's telling him not to go to Siva, but he was going to go to Siva no matter what. And they're like, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, oh my God. And there was another one with those John moments we had to pause, and I had to.
There was another thing. I don't remember where this was, but there's this. It was called the Gordian knot. And I guess it was this knot that was impossible to untie. And legend said that whoever could untie this would become king, or would live forever. I don't know what the legend said. And he just took out his sword and just sliced it in twain.
When you heard that legend, I guess I have never heard of the Gordian knot. When you heard that legend,
I didn't know it was Alexander the Great who did it, but I knew someone just said screw it and just cut it instead of untying it.
No, but when I never heard of it until this, and when I heard of the story, I'm like, wait, why don't you just slice right through it, like with a sword? That is what I thought before I realized that is what he did. Did you think that when you first heard of Gordian knot?
I don't know.
Like that was, I'm like, you don't have to untie it. You just literally slice through all the ropes, and it just falls apart.
Yeah.
So the thought I think is a resonance. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, I mean, it's like the sword and the stone, right? It's like it's impossible to untie the knot, but then ka-cha, and then it's impossible to remove the sword and the stone. I guess the analogy there was, I've got a jackhammer. I'm just going to bust the stone open and take it out, as opposed to Arthur magically taking it out, right? It's like I'm going to. Here's this problem that needs to be solved in order to reaffirm my
Royal line?
royal line.
Or like a mission, his mission.
Prophecy, something like that.
Yeah.
And instead of he's like, ka-cha.
Yeah.
Because that's the quickest way to get to fulfill my destiny.
Yeah. Well, like all throughout the documentary, what they keep on saying in like because it's not a spiritual thing, even though, I obviously relate to spiritual. He keeps on going these reaffirming destiny or prophecy type of missions.
Right.
But I think in the long run, what it is basically he is reestablishing his connection and he is reestablishing his process to make sure that he accomplishes becoming the Pharaoh of Egypt, like he was meant to be.
Yeah.
And saving his land, right? Like to him, the driving, think about this. I mean, we kind of talked about on the Dune episode that, I don't know, are we publishing that or not?
Yeah.
Okay. Right. The love for your land and the love for your people, right, has this enormous amount of drive into it. And so the drive that he has, because you would think like, okay, well, he's from Macedon. Here's this Babylon. What is the drive? Right? Do you know what I mean? There's like, if you think about it, okay, well, yeah, the Persian Empire is taken over, but what's the drive? You wouldn't have the drive. You wouldn't have the know-how and this huge archway prophetic nature of your mission unless you have something to prove or something to revenge or something to accomplish.
Yeah.
And the accomplishment is the love for my people, the revenge for my people, making sure I take over this wrongdoing and set things right.
Yeah.
And that's the drive. That is the inertia that was behind him.
Yeah.
Otherwise, his inertia cannot be explained.
Right. I mean, at any point, especially after he had conquered Egypt and really dealt a big blow to the Persian Empire, he could have just called it a day and said, I have taken all of this land. The Egypt was the crown jewel of the Persian Empire. And, it's no longer funneling gold back and food and wheat and
yeah,
whatever.
And that undermines the Persian Empire.
And that really, it's a huge embarrassment to the Persian Empire. In fact, at some point, Darius, who no longer has his wife, says, sends a note saying, "Hey, how about we just call it even? You keep all this, you keep Egypt, I keep what I've got, and we'll just call it even." And Alexander's like, "No, I'm coming for you."
Yeah.
He ends up. Alexander ends up, I guess, falling in love with maybe the empress.
Yeah, Darius's wife. He ends up having an affair, I guess, or a relationship with her.
And it's, how much of this is, well, if I put up with Alexander and sleep with him, maybe he won't kill me, and maybe he won't kill my daughter, maybe. And how much, I don't know.
Yeah, that's how the position is, that she did that in order to preserve herself.
In order to survive.
And then she was pregnant too. I don't remember what happens to her.
Oh yeah, she becomes pregnant with Alexander's child.
Yeah, I don't remember what happens to her and the child. And then, of course, there's the Darius's daughter, who's also there in Egypt. That Alexander's.
I want to say she dies, but I don't remember.
The wife dies, and does the daughter?
The daughter dies.
The daughter dies. I thought it was the wife that died.
Oh, maybe.
I thought both. I think
maybe the wife dies in childbirth.
Oh yeah.
Okay, and I don't remember if the child survives or not.
Yeah, the wife dies in childbirth. I don't remember what happens to the child.
Yeah, so Alexander ends up, going after Darius. Darius goes out to try to meet him. I don't know if they have another battle or something, but anyway, Darius is on the run, and Alexander's like half a day behind him, and then going through Persia. And finally, what they think happened is one of Darius's advisors ends up just realizes that this will never end until either Alexander is dead or Darius is dead, and we're not going to defeat Alexander. So the best thing to do to save ourselves, to save what's left of Persia, is just to kill Darius. They kill him, leave him there where they know Alexander will find him, and at least this ends the war. So they go, okay, we've got capture Darius. Okay. Alexander takes Darius's body, goes to, I guess it's Babylon, becomes king of Babylon, king of the Persian Empire. He takes over the entire Persian Empire, gives Darius a proper burial because, he was a, emperor or whatever, which I think goes a long way to sort of keep respect for the
Persians.
with the Persians.
Because
It's not like I'm going to disrespect this guy who used to lead.
you have to strategically move yourself into a position of love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the Greeks are super pissed off that he does that because it's like, this is the guy who killed the previous king. This is the guy who's the sworn mortal enemy of us for generations, and you give him a honorable burial and stuff. So that didn't sit well with some of the Greeks, at least according to the documentary.
Yeah.
But and ta-da, Alexander the Great now has the largest empire in the world in history at that time, because it's all of the Persian Empire plus Macedon
in his 20s.
In his 20s.
Yeah.
Right? And he never lost a battle.
Yeah. Which just looking at that through history.
Yeah, I mean he had military training, but he did not have military experience. Actually leading anything until he took over and just, here's my first battle ever, won the next one, won the next one, won the next one, da-da-da-da-da. I am the king of most, a large chunk of the world.
Yeah.
I don't remember how he died.
I thought he was like in his 30s.
He was young, but I don't remember.
He was like 33 or something.
I don't remember how he died.
I don't remember how he died. I mean, of course, through history, he sets up Alexandria to be like the
height of culture.
Height of all culture. Beyond like comprehension of what Earth at that time was able to offer.
Yeah.
And then he sets up the mystery schools.
And the library.
Right? Mystery schools through the library.
Yeah.
In order to basically bring, I would say, light, right? Enlightenment into the world.
And I've heard that the library was this place where, I guess, to begin with, and also later after Islam was, wait, no. When did it burn?
I don't know. Who burned it?
The Christians burned it, I thought.
Oh.
But I'm trying to remember when it burned. I thought it was at least a place where all different cultures and religions and sects could come together and share knowledge.
Yeah.
I thought it was the Muslims came too, but that would have been, I don't remember when it burned.
Yeah.
It might have burned after that.
No, his goal was to basically establish light on Earth. Like the goal of Egypt was to hold light for Earth.
But how it was written, it was like even the Jews, the Jewish mystery teachers were very welcomed into here.
Yeah, there was no way.
It was written like that because I guess they weren't welcome in a lot of other places.
Yeah. No, I don't think there was any discrimination against who could come and study there, who could come and
share their
partake in the knowledge.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, this is, I already said this, but I just want to reiterate it. Like, just marrying these two stories in my vision, like the Egyptian half of him, and then reincarnated / I come here for a very specific purpose, actively aware of this purpose, divinely destined for this purpose, is like total explanation.
Right.
Because why would you come from Macedon, which is in Greece, detour, not go for Babylon, not to go for the Persian takeover.
Especially right after you've got Darius on the run. It's like you could have just taken him out like that.
Yeah. Set up yourself as Pharaoh. And in fact, not even, his goal was not to be set up as Pharaoh. The people want him to be Pharaoh. Ding, ding, ding. Here's the recognition. Stay in Egypt, reestablish Egypt as this thriving country, right? Energetically expressive country. And then, basically continue to rage revenge, later as you have established the country into safety. And then basically grow that country to be like the pinnacle of civilization and then really knowledge, right? Like through mystery schools, just spreading of that knowledge worldwide. right? That was his goal. So like the brushstrokes of history like have this, I think people, of course, there's the pillaging and murdering portion of things, but like there's this great idea of like admiration and mysticism and fascination within him because we don't understand the essence of like, wait, what? You in your 20s? And then what is this drive? Where is this passion? Where is this skill set coming from? Like, we don't know this. So we just like still mystify, like that documentary kind of mystified this whole like, what the heck? Well, duh, he's a royal bloodline of someone who's not human.
Right.
He came here as not human to facilitate a role of himself from the previous reincarnation. I say previous, there's no such thing as previous, but you know what I mean, through another line of interpretation of experience as a human into this different interpretation as a human. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, perfect explanation. The drive comes out of this other lineage where he is the Prince of Egypt and he becomes the Prince of Egypt. Like the Siwa thing, it was just perfection.
Right. And he does all this in his 20s. Here I am at 45 and we haven't even paid this off yet. We don't even own this. He's got half the world.
No, but this goes back, honestly, it goes back to this Dune, right?
Yeah.
And right, like of being of royal blood. I don't know if Atreides was of royal blood.
Yeah. Well, yes. In the Dune universe, there are the great houses, which are basically.
So he's royal blood. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So in his father was the Duke, which is the highest honor.
But Dune universe, it's interesting.
Well, I guess Paul became Duke after his father died.
The Dune universe allows and recognizes these royal lines that like now from earthly standpoint we would consider extraterrestrial lines, right? But the Dune universe just has that as a built-in. I'm like, there's a civilization over there and over there, and they're all different.
In the Dune universe, there are no aliens.
That's what I mean. But
they're all humans, but they're all like maybe humans have like kind of split into two different species of humans, but they're all humans.
No, but when I say aliens, I mean humans, just not from Earth.
Okay, sure.
Not of Earth interpretation, right?
Okay.
So the royal family in Egypt, when we were a royal family, we were humans. Like I say, we were human. But we were human that was interpreting energy and density as a relay station with an awareness thereof.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. Then yeah.
Yeah. So, and I don't, I don't know if Dune clarifies that, right? Like when we think of aliens, they're not like yeah, they're not, whatever. I say they're not whatever, but like we don't understand their standing, and basically the way the vibrational frequency works out is you just have this other understanding of the world. You have this other awareness of the world in a more truthful way than Earthens do. Do you know what I mean? So with Earthens, like to us, we're very literal, I would say.
Yeah.
Or to where like, okay, well, this chair, here's the boundary of this chair, and this chair exists, and here's the boundary. Do you know what I mean? Like, and that obviously is very safe to us, but it's also very limiting, right? So we reinforced the standing of this chair having this boundary here,
right? Because
we need to, in order to then feel safe in the comprehended set of environments that we can exercise.
Right. It's to most people, it's like, how could it possibly be otherwise?
Yeah, I bet.
I mean, and the chair is, if anything, the chair is easy. And it's like, oh well, inside of this sack of skin is me, and outside of it is not me. And is this hair me? Well, maybe that's a gray area. Get it? But and well, if I drink water, does that water become me? Yeah, but but this microphone is definitely not me.
Yeah. So we
And
have these
you are definitely
boundaries-
not me.
boundarious nature of our
Yes.
reality. And this was like 3 or 4 years ago. We were not recording back then, but I wish I recorded. I didn't even remember if we were having cacao back then. This was when I first tuned into reality of an earthen frequency where everything was love. And then you and I were having those arguments. Do you remember that?
I do.
Yeah. So that was my first interaction. This is post 2019, but I don't remember when in 2019 because we had the chairs in our living room facing in a different direction. So this is, I think at the time I was channeling my book. And so when I was channeling my book, the energetic connection that I had to like all knowing was just so amplified that I would go into these crazy states of consciousness to where like, anyway, and one of the conversations you and I had was about the reality nature of a chair. And I don't know if you remember this or not. Like now that I think about it, it was totally crazy because, I don't channel as much anymore.
Wait.
And I was talking to you about the molecular structure of reality and how it completely disintegrates or opens up when you go into higher realms of frequency. Right. So the solidness of an object is very fluid interpretation. And I was talking about the chair because that was the example that they like crammed in. And so I was sitting there and I recognized this open structure of everything. Right. And so dimensionally, that is how the royal families in Egypt saw the world. And then when he was incarnated into his life, as Zeus's son, that is how his mother interpreted it, right? He still saw the world that way. Do you know what I mean? But the nature of time and space doesn't exist, right? So you can like foresee things into the future, or you can dictate outcomes into the future because there's no time and space. And so you kind of project your outcome out forward. And so like when you plan a battle out and you're able to function energetically on that level and you're dealing with someone who is of Earth,
you got a big advantage.
Yeah, it's just night and day. They have like, so him winning the battles is just simply manipulating energetic output of structure and basically facilitating the exact outcome. Like this is what you were talking about in Dune. When he sees every single line of interpretation.
It may be some prescience type thing where it's like, oh, I know here's a whole bunch of ways that I could lose, but here's a way I could win. Let's do that.
Yeah. And he just simply did that. So like the magic of Alexander winning the battles is just simply because he sees structure as fluid nature of reality, like the molecular biology of all things is visible. And so you basically project the intended outcome into, in his case, a battle, right? And then he basically ahead of time tells, okay, when this happens, you just go this direction. When this happens, you go this direction. So you're ahead of time is pre-planning through the vision of everything, right? So like when people are like, oh, well, he was smart enough and he decided to send these guys here and these guys there. Yeah, well, because he knows that was the way he was going to win.
Yep.
Like, no, but to us interpreting Earth from a locked molecular standpoint, we don't understand how somebody would be able to do that.
Right.
Yeah. But as a royal family in Egypt, he was, that's just how.
Sure.
That is the only thing you knew.
Because he's literally a god.
Well, God. He's just of extraterrestrial / higher dimensional interpretation of reality, and he comes to Earth.
And that's what I mean by God.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. So I want to point that out is what Egyptians interpreted as gods, because they literally believed to be gods, is just simply beings who were on Earth who had powers that were not understandable by humans.
Not normal human powers.
Yeah. In fact, you know what? This is very interesting. I'm just now connecting this. Do you remember the lifetime that I had where I was Egyptian queen, and then my husband used me to control the people.
Yeah.
This might be related to it. And then in that lifetime, I commit suicide. This might be the same lifetime because I feel trapped. Well, this would make sense, right? And my husband is not really my husband. Well, but then, I don't know. I don't know if I can connect it because I know I can, I know there's at least 3 lifetimes and I can't figure out
if they overlap,
or how they overlap. But there's a lifetime where I am used to control the masses through the energy that I have that is not of earth. And basically I feel trapped. And the only way for me not to be controlled was to remove myself. I'm assuming kill myself because it feels like that was the only way.
Yeah.
In order not to be used as basically an object of mass destruction.
Yeah.
But whatever leverage they had on me, I want to say they had my children, and the leverage was my children.
You do this else,
yeah. And so, right. And so I don't know if it's the same lifetime. I don't know if I end up having children with whoever takes over Egypt. And then therefore those children are used against me, even though I don't see the children much. Like I remember thinking, children are mine, but they're not letting me see them. But I know they're alive. And so I have to basically be used as a weapon of mass destruction in order to control the population of Egypt. And the population of Egypt, only at the time, we were willingly given energy and supporting Egyptians, earthen Egyptians, when we were the royal family. But in this case, right, because the energy intent was an energy of love, but in that lifetime or after, so yeah, maybe it is a different lifetime, but in this lifetime or this interpretation, I am now able to take, so you're able to take any energy and through your intent, you can use it for good, you can use it for bad. But in this case, they were forcing me to dole it out in the limited quantities as opposed to freely distributed as like this energy of love.
Right.
And the limited quantity thereof created control.
To control, yeah.
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 And I struggled a lot releasing that. In fact, I think that was one of the reasons why I wasn't letting my memory of things, of Egyptian energy come on board, because if like I had stuck energy within me being a tool for bad. Do you see what I mean? Like if you had this immense amount of power and you were being forced to use it for bad, then I would hesitate then to have that power come back online if there's this stuckness in my psyche.
That it was at one point used for bad.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Edgar Cayce had that exact same thing.
A hesitation to use it.
Well, no. So he was a priest in Egypt, and I visit him as a priest in Egypt all the time. And at some point, he had one of it, and so he always had the possession of this energy through all of his lifetimes. I don't know what his particular reincarnation is, but every single lifetime he chose to come here with, he has this energy. Like he, is able to possess it the second he's able to open it. But he remembered in one of his lifetimes, he used that energy for bad, like by choice or control. I don't know. In my case, it was through force. And so when he came into this lifetime, the reason why he became the sleeping prophet was because he wanted to shield his conscious psyche of a human brain to be able to use this energy for any purpose other than light. And he knew that the only way he could turn into light is if he went into the hypnotic mode of sleep, where he was only tuned into his higher consciousness and not tuned into earthly ego self.
The ego is removed from it.
Yeah. So that's why he was a sleeping prophet by choice. Like, right, because he could do that non-sleeping, but he was afraid of his ego consciousness taking over.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so hence the sleeping prophet. Yeah. But it's interesting because converse with him so much in his like Egyptian priest mode, and he's never anything but light. But on Earth, he was never anything but like. So I don't even know how he would get into a position where he was anything but light. But obviously, he remembers a lifetime where it was not so. But I guess in my Egyptian lifetime, I remember a lifetime where it was not so. But it was by force.
Yeah.
But the force was related to fear of unsafety for my children. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or the worst thereof. Like, oh, if you don't do this, we'll start killing people.
Yeah.
Was one of the threats. So I'm like, oh, it's better for these people to continue to live and to be controlled by these entities as opposed to dying.
Right.
So there was another consideration there. It's interesting because like Alexander's arc, I think, comes into the Atreides' arc. But I think because he took the archetype of Alexander and wrote it into Atreides' fictional story.
Yeah. I mean, I know Frank Herbert used a lot of different stories, both factual and fictional, and sort of took bits and pieces of it. A lot of African and Arabic stuff too. I mean, the whole Fremen people. I mean, there's a whole lot of like either Arabic or Persian words in there because I'm like, what does this word mean? And I'd look it up, and it's got I forget if it's Arabic or Persian roots, root word. So he kind of invented this language derived from that as well.
Yeah.
It's
yeah, but archetypally, whatever Atreides represents is actually just a royal line of like what Egyptian interpreted as a royal line was basically his heritage as a planetary leader, right?
I mean, like Paul's father was portrayed in the book as just the best person, just a good person who cared more about people than prophets, and he would rather save the people than save the machine, the very expensive machine that they don't have many of. He would much rather save the people, all that stuff. So the Atreides were the reason that the whole setup, the whole reason that the Atreides got Arrakis to begin with was a big plot to kill them off because he was becoming so popular that it was a threat to the emperor himself. That's which I didn't get from the story. I had to look it up, but that's the backstory on that. The Atreides were getting too popular, too powerful amongst the great houses that it was like, okay, well, we're gonna meet the emperor and the Harkonnens kind of schemed. Okay, well, we'll take Arrakis away from the Harkonnens, put the Atreides in there. They're going to fail, and then the Harkonnens, with the help of the Imperial army, will go and just take it over and destroy them once and for all. And it's like there's these weird rules that like it's kind of okay for great houses to fight each other, but only in certain ways. And in general, it's like you can't use these atomic bombs, right? That's just right out. You use an atomic bomb, we're going to destroy your entire planet type of a thing, like a mutually assured destruction. But, you can use assassins. That's cool. Everybody uses assassins.
Yeah. Like, it's interesting because like we interpret like reality on Earth as a, like, like Alexander the Great's accomplishments are just like, oh, and then there's like the world is obsessing over him for those who are kind of like in that realm. Do you know what I mean? But like he has this like
larger than life
energetic
persona.
Well, persona, but I want to say like, because I can still feel it. Like it is this resonance that is still resonating that we feel, but it's because there's no time and space. Technically, we feel this great resonance to a simulation that it feels important or it feels big, but it's because energetically it is something that is on a higher realm of energetic interpretation that we feel home to. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like Does that make sense?
I think so.
The reason why everyone's looking for something is because they want to connect to the essence of them where they are in oneness with their universal connection to the source.
Right.
Whatever that means.
Right.
And he is quite literally in oneness with the universal connection to the source, just like the pharaohs were, right? So Egyptian lion was that. So what people saw through them was a way to connect in, like, being very benevolent and kind and loving relay stations.
Right.
That is what, like as far as experience with extraterrestrials on Earth, I know people have negative stories and whatnot, but if you're interacting with the correct one, that is what they are. Like the reason why, like there's this light and love and shine that comes out of them is because they have that energetic resonance of just being a relay station of light. That you, as a limited being of interpretation, not because you are a limited being of interpretation, but you interpret your beingness as limited, you're able to tune into in order to draw source into your periphery. And, Alexander the Great is that. Like when you touch on his essence, it is not of earthly interpretation, I would say.
Right. I think the same thing.
Yeah, but there's these figures that have this magnetic draw to them.
Right.
That is larger than life.
Like
and in our case, what, 3,000 years or how many thousands of years later? I don't know.
It's like 300 BC or something.
Okay. Yeah. So 2,000 years later, right? Like as far as time goes,
Right.
we're like, why?
It feels like a Greek myth. Like it sounds like it sounds too wild to be true. That some 20-year-old over the course of 10 years, less than 10 years because I don't know how long he lived after it, but over the course of a few years, goes from, just this prince in exile to king of the world.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, but the resonance there is just ginormous.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Take it for what you will,
Yeah.
but it is absolutely, I felt it as like an interpretation of me and then like interpretation of my son.
Yeah. I remember when you're telling me the story, I'm like, this sounds like Alexander the Great. And I go and as we're walking, I look it up. I'm like, and then he does this, and then he does this, and then he does this. And it's like, it's just in line. It's so great.
Yeah. No, I did. So I was questioning what I will do with this information in regards to Aiden, right? Because like I realize I don't know how he would interpret it. Like he's open-minded enough, but at the same time.
By the way, you might be the reincarnation of Alexander the Great.
You're right. Like, I don't know what a child would do with that information at the age of 18. Do you know what I mean? And it does.
Also, your father might be Zeus.
It doesn't even have to mean anything. Do you know what I mean? Like it.
I know.
Like I know he is a reincarnation of that being. I do know that, but it doesn't have to mean anything archetypally. Everybody comes here to interpret a life as its own stand, right? Like its own life. I do know, he might get angry at me for saying this, but I do know he has this huge locked energy of abandonment.
Yeah.
That he came here to work through. Like he came here to work through this energy of abandonment. And of course, from the standpoint of the archetype that is, the Prince of Egypt type of a energy, when your father gets killed and your mother basically is enslaved and you are shoved through the portal, abandonment
that sounds like abandonment.
Yeah, abandonment is kind of stuck in there.
Right.
And then as you come back for revenge, the anger of abandonment and frustration is just locked in there, and revenge is locked.
That could really fuel somebody to.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of his conquest through entirety of Eastern Europe and into the Middle East was fueled through that much three-dimensional human energy, three-dimensional human interpretation, right? Because that is the earthly energy that it was being vibrated through. But then, of course, that is a karmical cycle for him to work through. At the same time, realizing he's interpreting energy also from as a relay station, from a direct relay. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's interesting because when they come in, they interpret reality in a dual sense of way, but I don't mean a dualistic. It is not a dualistic split. So they come in and they go into a narrative of a human experience, and it feels very, very real to them. But at the same time, almost like as this other notion, they have a complete understanding of who they are and what is it that they're doing, and they're seeing the entire experience as a, let's say, Shakespearean drama playing out here,
Right.
while at the same time be completely cognitive that I'm this other being that has an immense amount of power interpretation, and this is my expression.
Right. Seeing it, they're at multiple levels at the same time.
Yeah, at the same time.
Yeah.
And it's really cool to experience that, to like be able. I think the podcast that we were attempting to have today, that we were going in between, will be the next interpretation, is because it's your, what was the word, transpersonal awareness.
Yeah.
And so they have that. They have an awareness of their personal experience that, if from Earth's standpoint, you would see it as a Shakespearean drama, that is their reality, and very real interpreted reality. And then they have this transpersonal overview of the entire thing. And they're distinct two concepts. Does that make sense?
Well, we'll explore that in the next one.
Yeah, I guess. But anyway, so yeah.
That it?
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.